sleeping wise, like after you're raped, it reoccurring again and again. Getting beat by your parents, fearing them coming through your bedroom door while you're sleeping to beat you because they forgot to beat you for something earlier that day. I had a pretty battered background.
My most current frightening nightmare was I had just fallen asleep and I heard somebody yell my name in my right ear very loud. Jonathan! Like they were right next to me, and I woke up and there was nobody there.
I had this horrible nightmare that for some reason I lived in Tokyo, and there was this giant giraffe that was like bigger than the biggest building in the world, and it was like breathing flames and everything, and it just, you know, devoured Tokyo, just, you know, stomped on all these buildings like the Stay Puft guy in Ghostbusters. And it was like really horrifying, and I was running around everywhere, and I found my mom like changing in a public restroom. I like walked into this random stall and she was there, and I'm like, oh my god, Mom, there's a huge giant giraffe taking over Tokyo. And she's like, oh, it's no big deal, blah blah blah, and just like left me there. And then I was like, God, all alone, and then, you know, I woke up.
My worst nightmare was probably when I was 9 or 10 years old, and I had a wind-up toy robot, a metal robot that I played with, and I had a dream that a giant robot, something like maybe a Godzilla or a King Kong monster, but it was my robot, was attacking where I lived. And I remember running away from it, and it kept pursuing and charging after me. The sparks were coming out of its chest, like on my little model that I played with. And I've always remembered that dream as a nightmare.
I'm a dandelion in a big field of grass, and all of a sudden a lawnmower comes by and runs me over, and that's it.
Worst nightmare, I was 5, and I was like, I was an inch tall, and I was in this like giant city, but it was all gray concrete, everything was black and white. And I was trapped in this city of like nothing, and there's this huge spider, like this gigantic spider chasing me, and I just ran and ran and ran, and I never got away from it. It was like my whole life was running from this goddamn spider.
The worst nightmare, and I have this nightmare a lot, I haven't had it in a long time, but we're driving in the car, I'm in the back seat of the car, I'm a little kid, and my dad's driving, and my dad is mad, and he's yelling, and he's cussing, and he's starting to swing, and we drive off the mountain, and we drive off the mountain, and then we crash.
My worst nightmare is quite simply a volcano called Mount St. Helens that I lived through, and I'm totally damaged now.
I'll stay with you, darling, now. I'll stay with you till the sea's all dried.
Basically, my worst nightmare was Darth Vader, and I would be running and running away from Darth Vader, and my nightgown would get longer and longer and longer, but he would still be like and like dragging my fucking, like my, you know, my nightgown, and I'd be just like trying to get a claw and get away from him, and that was it. And I could never get away from him, and he would eventually, like, I'd wake up just as he was like going to grip me, you know, like he did that the stormtrooper. He like kills the stormtrooper like by like holding him and just like ah.
I remember being so happy that I had this soup, but I remember getting to the bottom of this bowl of soup, and there was a bloody syringe at the bottom of my bowl of soup. And everyone in the room started laughing, and I started crying, and I felt so sick, and I went into the bathroom, and I started throwing up and throwing up and throwing up, and it seemed like hours I was in the bathroom, and then I went out, and everyone else was asleep, and my bowl of soup was laying there in the middle of the floor. And so I went and crawled up to my bowl of soup, and I grabbed my syringe, and I crawled into the refrigerator, and I stuck my syringe into the 5 pounds of beef, and I walked out the door, and I slammed the door shut.
Waking up and being a 50-year-old casino manager. There we go. Think about that one for a while.
Nightmare is waking up after a dream of where I didn't have to work the next day, but I thought I was cooking orders, and my brother was laughing at me because I was talking in my dream while I was sleeping, calling out orders and telling people what to do. That was the worst one I ever had.